Oh, okay. Sorry. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us here at DataCon LA 2022. This is the the Emerging Tech track. I'm your host, Carlos Olivas, and your co-host, Mitzi Bandera. Just a reminder to please be mindful of the COVID regulations that we got going on. Keep your mask on while indoors. Also a reminder, please turn off your phones during the session. The session is being live broadcast over Zoom and is being recorded. The online recordings will be available in a few weeks. We have our special speaker today, Mariana Danilovic, who will be speaking about how Web3 is Metaverse changing entertainment. Without further ado, pass it off to our speaker.
Thank you, Carlos, and thank you, Mitzi, for organizing this room today. And thank you for coming to this session. I hope you're interested in Web3 because it's going to be very Web3 focused. Metaverse is something that has been somewhat defined and somewhat more defined as we go. There was a big Metaverse report by McKinsey & Company, which is one of the top tier consulting companies on the planet Earth, that is attributing about 5 trillion in revenue to the Metaverse by 2030. I've been speaking about how blockchain and Web3 has been changing entertainment industry here for maybe over 6 years at this conference. And this time, I think we have just a lot more to talk about. And there's just a lot more information that I'm interested in sharing with you today. My name is Mariana Danilovic, Managing Director of Infiom. And just a little bit about our background and or our bias, I guess, for the discussion. Infiom is a global accelerator that's concentrating on connecting and onboarding Fortune 500 companies into the Metaverse and Web3 spaces. So everything, including things that you may have heard of like DeFi, NFTs, DAOs, all those business models. And we also work with high growth ventures in the space that are usually fundraising and or focused on business development to kind of create that unicorn presence if they can. So we work with all the disruptive technology accelerators around the globe. We also work with Fortune 500 companies, heads of innovations at those places, and investors in the space. We do this through our local and virtual Infiom salons, which are held every other Wednesday. We also do 3 weekly clubhouse discussions. We send out an AI-powered newsletter every Sunday that summarizes top news as the space is growing really fast. We have the venture and NFT boost programs that allow next generation companies to get to the next level. And we're building a digital media network. You can see a lot of the presentations that we've done over the last 3 years online on our YouTube channel. So that's who we are. We have created this global community of companies that are accelerating Web3 space, Metaverse with Web3 primarily. By partnering with the technology funds and other investors investing in the space, including hedge funds, for example. We also partner with top-tier Metaverse with Web3 disruptive companies. They're different than Metaverse with Web2, and I'll explain that in a second. We have Fortune 500 partners, and all the accelerators and labs focusing on building the ecosystem are also our partners. This is who our members are. They're usually investors, venture capitalists, family offices, angel investors, cryptocurrency funds, hedge funds, exchanges, entrepreneurs and developers in the space, corporate funds, established Fortune 500 companies, which all now have a Metaverse division, as well as focus on Web3 in one of their or 2 of their divisions. And we also partner with the top tier ventures that are kind of creating the space. And also all the investors originally in the space. I ran BitAngels globally, which was the angel network that invested in the launch of Ethereum. So all of those original kind of OG people who have developed the space that we're talking about today. So this slide is from my presentation. Maybe you've seen it last year, maybe you've seen it the year before, but the entertainment industry has many challenges. How many in this room are actually working in entertainment in any way? Okay, so then it's not sort of intuitively obvious what those challenges are. These are the few that I outline each year as I talk about, what's happening with Web3 and decentralization of entertainment. Consumers' ability to access content is, discoverability, affordability, access due to geography. All of those things are not as available as you would think, despite the fact that there are many streaming companies out there, a couple of thousand at this point. But, one cannot subscribe to that many of them, and therefore getting coverage for the content you're interested in the geography that you're interested in is not necessarily available. Producers and talent really don't have the ability to participate in the intellectual property ownership. And this is a data conference. It's all about the IP. It's all about the data, how it's managed. Doesn't matter who has access to it. And most importantly, it doesn't matter who benefits from it. This is really the key question that I will address today. So at the moment, creating IP in Hollywood doesn't mean that you would actually own any equity in that IP. And that's something that we'll see fundamentally shift with these new opportunities. Issue number 3 is really kind of engaging the community to participate in the process of creation of entertainment. If you look at the Web3 communities, and I'll spend some more time on them later, they're very engaged and they're very involved in the creation of Web3 companies. In entertainment today, no one really is engaging consumers in an effective way to help them with production, distribution, marketing, even creation of events surrounding viewing of the content. None of that is really going on and developed at the moment. Issue number 4 is accurate tracking of ownership and profit. And this is something that many of the NFTs companies, especially music NFTs companies, are trying to address at the moment. This sort of collaborative effort that happens in music and film and television as well, and games, when many people are actually contributing to that particular production, and then getting payment for that, even from the 3 music majors, is very challenging, down the line. So this is something that will be resolved, I would say, in the first wave of the Web3 companies. And then issue number 5 is the ability to distribute content to an engaged audience. So, even if you look at streamers like Netflix and Amazon and Apple, they have consumer data now. Studios never really even cared about the consumer data. It was sort of decisions were made at the top and thrown out there, and hopefully people would be interested in viewing it. They had some data from home video distribution, but nobody really used it in decisions on what films to make or what TV programming to make. Now Netflix and Amazon have it, but now they own it. So now it's like that data is now in the hands of this new group of majors who are now using it just to their own advantage, not sharing data, et cetera. And so I think ownership of data is really going to be the place where Web3 creates a whole host of new opportunities and business models. So good for a data conference, I think. Okay. So the metaverse is on track to become the next generation of the internet. This is straight out of the McKinsey report. It says it will affect every industry. And if you look at on this diagram, looking at the current metaverse adoption, you can see that some of the highest adopters, other than high tech, energy and resources, media and entertainment companies. So this will affect every industry, as pointed by McKinsey in this report in June of 2022. And we see entertainment kind of leading the way. So everyone has participated in here in this room in Web 2 environments. So you probably, the social media environments, this is everything that was developed on the web from 2004 to now. It's about reading and writing on the web. If you look at the Web 3.0 environments, they started in 2014 onward. I would say BitAngels were launched in 2013. So they invested in the launch of Ethereum. So it was like 2013, 2014 when this whole thing started. And it's read, write, and own. That's the difference. It's not just read only. It's not read, write. It's read, write, and own. And owning that sort of creative community and creator economy is what's changed with the Web3. So if you look at the Web3 as the next generation of internet, it's developed on public blockchains, on decentralized network. And that means that where individuals own and govern sections of the internet. So it's not just owned by centralized groups like the Googles of the world and Facebooks or Metas of the world. It's permissionless, where central authorities are not controlling access to service. It's trustless, where virtual transactions occur between two or more parties without intermediaries. They're occurring without intermediaries. And it's private. User privacy is better protected due to lack of centralized databases. And I think Nicole came up and talked to me before the session, and we said a lot of the discussion here, this conference, is about how to protect the data, how to manage it effectively and protect it effectively. And one of the ways of protecting it is to just spread it around and decentralize it and not keep it in a silo. So Web3 is characterized by digital assets issued on blockchain with hyper-engaged communities. And you probably recognize these Bored Apes. They're being sold in the $150,000 to $250,000 range per, pixel here per NFT. People have somehow been able to use these Bored Apes as their profile pictures on Facebook or Twitter. They're becoming their identity. It's saying, I have $250,000 to spend on an NFT, and I'm a Bored Ape member community. But more importantly for us, I think for our discussion today, is that, yes, it's an exclusive community, great application of an NFT group, et cetera. But what's really interesting about Bored Apes is that each Bored Ape, the IP, the intellectual property, is owned by the owner of the Bored Ape. And this is not true of all the NFTs. Most of the NFTs, like CryptoPills, another great NFT project, the actual founders of CryptoPills own the property, all the intellectual property. So if you own a crypto pill that you really love, you can't just put it on a t-shirt and sell it to your friends and family or some other people. You don't own the commercial rights to that crypto pill. You do own the commercial rights to the Bored Ape. It's just going to cost you a couple $100,000. Okay. So community and DAO are the main components of this Web3 world. It's the heart and the soul of a blockchain project. And one of the reasons why I think DAOs are so important is that for the first time, with this next generation of internet, you have these liquid assets, NFTs, which I've talked about now, but also cryptocurrencies. These liquid assets are building the economies that, underlying the asset. And therefore, everybody who contributes to this community is getting paid by these assets, either by NFTs or by cryptocurrencies. And therefore, not only that you're building them, you feel good that you've done that you built something valuable, you're actually being compensated by this valuable asset, and you're making it more valuable as you contribute to it. So you invested in this economy. So that's why I think these communities and DAOs are so much more powerful than having like a group of ambassadors, that the brands had with Web 2, right? You were making some money, you were getting a cool t-shirt from being an ambassador, you might have gotten some discounts, but it's not like you own cryptocurrency or you own NFTs and they're valuable and they could be even more valuable tomorrow. And it's directly related to you actually contributing to making it valuable. So that's a very different premise. And so these decentralized natures of the blockchain ensures that no single entity or individual is in control of any project. And so there's this consensus being built within the community to move all the projects forward. This is a very important component that makes a huge difference once you decide to embark on Web3. So if you look at the Metaverse, as a $5 trillion in revenue opportunity, according to this McKinsey report that just came out a couple of weeks ago. In 2021, venture capital and private equity funding into the Metaverse was only $13 billion. Into the crypto space and blockchain space, it was $30 billion in 2021, which is not on this slide, but it dwarfed the $13 billion. But there was $120 billion invested in the Metaverse space by Web 2 and Web3 investors. So the Metas of the world and Microsofts. And so all the large companies are chasing this. And so they put in about 120 billion. By the time this report was out, it was just the first 2 quarters of 2022. And they're expecting that the metaverse size could reach to 5 trillion by 2030. 2030 is in like 7 years. It's not like in 70 years. You know, this is like literally like tomorrow. Like you're going to think about it and it's going to be 5 trillion, right? So if you're building a business, you know, I've been in the innovation business my whole career. And when you have a $5 billion market, you were very excited and you could launch a venture, you know, venture-backed venture. This is a $5 trillion market. If you want to be very excited and launch a few businesses in this market, it's a very good time, you know, just about now, you know, as you leave this room. So consumers and brands are already, you know, engaging. So 59% of all the consumers are excited about transitioning their everyday activities to the metaverse. It's like 60% of the consumers already know about this. So the, you know, the news is out. This is actually happening. And then 50% of the metaverse aware companies say they're adopters. So you can't really go to your board of directors in 2022 and say, oh, we don't believe in the metaverse. It's just not an answer you can provide to the board. So the revolution is growing month by month. Companies need to start planning their metaverse with Web3 strategy now. I'm going to spend a little more time on entertainment, but if you're in some other, you know, industry vertical, this is a good time to do your strategy as well. You need to define your goals for the metaverse. You need, you know, our next generation of the internet, if you like. You need to determine the role you aim to play in these markets. It may not be the same role that the company plays today, like we were talking about Annenberg, you know, maybe some other opportunities for the foundation. And then you can launch initial activities and use cases. You can monitor near-term results and refine long-term potential. And long-term is 7 years, so you got to refine a lot here. You're going to learn more about users, and you need to identify and start scaling capabilities and embed in business strategy and operating models. So this needs to become sort of like a, you know, adoption almost immediately. As you do the strategy, you need to have an implementation right on the back of that strategy ready to go. So trends in the media, sports, and entertainment industries point towards a need for radical change, which, you know, is something that I have been speaking about for a few years now here. I'll just give you some examples to understand like what's going on. Feature films made by studios are seemingly in flux. There are fewer films made every year. There are fewer studios, and, you know, as many of them have been acquired in this last couple of years. And it, you know, getting a picture deal or a 3-picture deal, like an overhead deal where the studio would pay the company, the production company, to be on the lot, you know, to show up to work, to develop things, that's almost very challenging at this point to accomplish. So industry leaders are looking to cut the production, distribution, and marketing costs. And then filmmakers, directors, screenwriters, all the participants in, you know, in the film economy, they're turning towards a new way of making movies and TV series, metaverse with Web3, tokenization and NFTs. And you probably have heard of many, many different companies launching this in the last, you know, few months, really. So metaverse with Web3 is creating a paradigm shift in independent filmmaking. It's, you know, creators now have the power in kind of in creating and funding their creations above and beyond the studio system or, you know, the streaming economy, which is a bit like employment because you really don't own equity in your product with one of the streamers. So people have been locked out of the studio system because they didn't have a track record. Maybe they didn't get an agent. Maybe they were outside of Hollywood. It's more of a level playing field. If you can figure out how to fund your creation, you have a great story, you can get it out there and build it with your community if you'd like. So not only is the next generation of, you know, young and maybe out of Hollywood filmmakers and musicians embracing this new avenue of films getting made, but a lot of the established creators, some of them on these photos here, who have jumped on board. So some other examples of the enterprises and investors engaging in this new world. You have Gucci, who has a new virtual world on Roblox, which is, a children's game. So they're starting them young. You have Walmart, who's quietly preparing to enter the metaverse. JP Morgan, which is one of the largest banks, opens a Decentraland lounge. Decentraland is a VR metaverse, virtual reality. Like Superworld is an AR type metaverse. Sandbox and Decentraland are VR-driven metaverses. And so they're trying to capitalize on what they think would be $1 trillion in revenue opportunity for the banks in metaverse. JP Morgan also has published some findings that the metaverse will, for the fintech side of the business, may go up to 9 trillion in 2030. And Citigroup said it would be 13 trillion. So, there are just some large estimates out there. Whatever you believe out of all those projections, they're quite large. And so Warner Music Group is launching a metaverse concert hall where you can pay to be its neighbor, so you can actually buy land next to it. So this is an independent film project on Web3, Kino DAO, which is a Swedish film producer, Niels Juhl, who is an entrepreneur and executive producer, and his credits include, Martin Scorsese's Silence and The Irishman. Each NFT for Kino DAO, Kino is like a cinema, I think. It will be a membership pass that would be granting a voting power and studio decisions. So here they're engaging the community, as well as other benefits like free merchandise, film festival, after party tickets, your name in the film credits. You know how hard that is. I mean, the Producers Guild, this is super hard to get today. And, you can also get more NFTs after that first drop, etc. So like other NFT startups, a portion of the profits for each film will be funneled back to the community and earmarked toward the next project. So the community will get paid from some of the success, as well as it can invest into, furthering the success. And it becomes a much more equitable proposition. Spike Lee has the Visible project. He's always been sort of the, market leader in independent film production, and his stories have kind of driven, the film industry forward. Now here, his business acumen is doing the same. The collection he launched featured 3945 NFTs of original frames in his 1986 film, She's Gotta Have It, a classic. The Visible project has partnered with the Habitat Labs, an NFT white label service provider, to implement this new way of filmmaking. And so they're basically creating a community surrounding next generation of his projects. Naz is an artist who's basically performed his song Rare as part of a medley at the 2022 Grammy Awards. And there's a lot of collaboration going usually at the Grammy Awards, where you see people playing along from different genres, within the same song. And this particular rendition of Rare is noteworthy because some of the viewers actually own a portion of that song that was, of the streaming rights of the song, because they were participating in an earlier NFT drop that basically had tokenized royalties associated with that song. And because it played on during the Grammys, it was pretty much well heard around the world. So in January, Naz released 2 tracks as limited edition NFTs with embedded streaming royalty rights. At $50 ownership, interest earned 0.0143% of the song streaming royalties. And if you spend just under $5,000, $49.99, you're going to actually own 2.14% of the royalties of that particular song, Rare. So that was an experiment in having the, the community fund the production of a new song and then have a fractional ownership in it. Coachella has auctioned. I don't know if you guys have gone to Coachella this year. It was back in action. You were there. I see some smiling faces. So you could have bought a lifetime festival pass for Coachella, right? It was they partner with FTX, which is one of the top cryptocurrency exchanges, and they auction off lifetime passes to the festival as NFTs one-on-one that grant lifetime festival access and VIP on-site experiences. So not only that you can come back to Coachella every year, but you would have a special experience. And you know, the head of innovation at Coachella said, Sam, only blockchain technology can give us the unique ability to offer tradable lifetime passes. So it's not just like you own it, you paid quite a bit of money for it, and you can't go next year, or you're very busy at work. You can actually sell it for a year to someone else, or you can sell it all together to someone else, or to several people who will then share going, etc. So that's what this liquidity of NFTs and liquidity of cryptocurrency allows people to do with valuable assets. And Decentraland, which is a metaverse that's already been built, it has its own cryptocurrency. It's a VR based, so it's a virtual reality experience based, unlike Superworld, which has 64 billion plots of land that are actually overlays of the world that we live in, of Earth, into the Superworld. So that's more of an AR, augmented reality metaverse. So Decentraland and JP Morgan basically have created a lounge featuring a tiger as the bank seeks to capitalize on 1 trillion revenue opportunity from the metaverse. So you can go to JP Morgan advisors in metaverse on Decentraland and get advice on your portfolio, both your crypto and your maybe equities portfolio. So this is an interesting play that traditional businesses like banks are entering as well. And then Sandbox did a deal with Warner Music to create a virtual world. Sandbox is another virtual world or VR type metaverse environment, and it will feature concerts and musical experiences from Warner Music's leading roster of artists like Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg has done so much with cryptocurrencies. He has an NFTs marketplace on crypto.com, and he's just done a lot of projects in the space. And so, Sandbox is more of a gaming site. And so having this Warner Music experience in Sandbox is somewhat of a gamifying of that experience, which we're going to see more and more as time goes on. So this is one of the companies we've been working with. This is actually a blockchain protocol called Numbers. And the reason why I pulled a few slides from our Numbers presentation is to show you what is going to happen with Web3 files and Metaverse files in this decentralized world, how it's going to be different than being on the internet. So basically, Numbers protocol is a layer 1 protocol, just like an Ethereum or Cardano, that is focused on putting a media file onto the protocol. So this is not an NFTs type app where you actually just know the location of the file, location that you have ownership rights to that Bored Ape, or that you have ownership rights to a physical photograph or a physical piece of artwork. This is actually a full scale putting your media file, your video, your audio onto the blockchain, on chain, so you can track not just the access rights, which is the bottom of this. You can also track royalties and compensation. You can track the underlying commercial rights, ownership, and distribution of the asset. So once you put your media file on chain in this new environment like this, you can literally track everything that's related to that data, all the metadata surrounding that media asset are going to be now on chain. And this is why I borrowed this important slide from Numbers protocol. So if you just think about Numbers being the layer 1 protocol that has, basically record-keeping system and functionality to track all of these things. Well, what are the things that they're tracking? Resale of the asset. So, like, is your Coachella pass, just yours, or did you sell it to a person, or did they sell it to someone else? What are the royalties associated with that Nas song? Who has the voting rights surrounding that media file? Could you vote on the production of that film or the making of that music track? What access do you have to events? the smart contract triggers. What would trigger a function like a sale of an asset? What would trigger change in ownership? What would trigger different royalty structures? So all sorts of legal contracts that can be attached to this media asset were actually going to be included on chain, on the blockchain itself. And then other licensing, contractual, and utility functions will all be included and trackable. Once it's on chain, you actually can see all this as a third party. You know, you can scan it. It's no longer a black box inside some database, right? So this is what Numbers has done. And then for art, and by the way, they've been funded by Binance and Protocol Labs and the founder of YouTube. So they have a lot of really good customers at the moment, you know, tracking a bunch of photographs and political files at the moment, video files, music files, etc. So for artists and enterprises in the music industry, for example, Numbers can guarantee trust and visibility throughout the sales process. So let's say you have Nas's song or you have your own song that you want to put on chain. You would go into Numbers protocol and register this digital asset. You can do a sale. You can do a trade. You can claim your ownership. It will be verified, traceable, and visible. So this is fundamentally different than what's going on with music assets at the moment. And then also, they track these payment structures to ensure provenance and traceability of film and television files. So if you have producers, distributors, directors, talent, so all the participants in the film and television business, you can track revenue share for each party. You can also look at the film and television files as a unique digital asset. You can see so you can track how this was sold in each global territory. And then on the consumer side, you can track whether, you know, Nicole bought a, subscription to Netflix or to this, Web3 version of it, and whether she's going to get the file that has a subscription attached to it as a revenue source. And I didn't want to pay for subscription, so Mariana bought just the ad-supported version. It would track that, and maybe you wanted to do a pay-per-view version and it would track that you got that particular file, and you can see it. It's, immutable, it's transparent on the blockchain, and this is what happened to the file. So this is where Web3 is going to fundamentally shift data management, in this case, video management. And these are some of our projects in addition to the Numbers protocol. We're at the moment working, these are all Web3 projects. Superworld is a company we've been working with since 2018. You can buy a real estate plot in Superworld, and you can build your own media business on top of that plot of land. You buy it with the 0.10 ETH is how much it costs you to buy a Dodgers stadium size plot of land. And you basically can also put some NFTs on that plot of land. You can have a concert, you can film, create a film, you can have a television show, etc. Earn TV is a company that we started working with in 2020. It's an OTT company like a Netflix, like an Amazon, except that instead of being asked to pay subscription or ad-supported revenue, we actually pay viewers to watch television, and the ad networks pay into that. Numbers protocol is what I just showed you, how fundamentally shifting the actual management of all media files in Web3. And then Crypto Art Agency is a company that's basically marketed this original sci-fi art collection in, for 20 years through all sorts of variety of consumer outlets. And they've done quite a few NFT drops with it, with variety of ways, on OpenSea, down to auctions of known origin, wax, etc., and just trying to figure out the marketplace for NFTs. They do a whole host of different art collections and consumer products in the NFT space and the Metaverse space. And some of these other companies like Monax and Buddy Down, SafeGram are fintech versions of where the Web3 is going. So these are some of the companies that we've been kind of nurturing along the way. We believe that this market is coming to every industry. I gave you an example of the entertainment industry and how it's fundamentally shifting the way you basically track data in Web3, the way that you manage ownership of this data, copyright, sale of it, royalties attached to it, so revenue attached to it. This is really applicable to almost any industry, and we believe that you know, at the next presentation, you guys will have many questions about how this, you know, how many different business models have you seen in this next year that we have ahead of us that are basically going to shift the way that we interact with data in this new world. And with that, I'm ready for a couple of questions. If you have any questions. Yes, go ahead. Yes, you.
Okay. How do you think this payment system on Web3 would be designed without cryptocurrencies? Do you think it can work even with your normal fiat currency, or do you think that the volatility of the currency?
So let me separate that into like two parts. Part one, could you process fiat in any of these solutions versus crypto? Yes. Now, do I believe that crypto has a place in Web3 that's very unique? Yes. So, you know, both things are true. Many people don't want to deal with the cryptocurrencies at the moment because it's labor intensive. You have to set up a MetaMask and you don't know how to do it, or you have to have a Coinbase wallet or, you know, Binance, and you don't know which territory, which one of these applies, and how do you put money in and how do you take money out. But you know, at the bottom line, what's really important is that will all figure itself out as the market develops. These systems will get solved and easier to use. But being incentivized by something that you're building, you know, that you have equity ownership in something, and you can do it with cryptocurrencies much easier than with stock ownership or any other, or with fiat. That in itself, I think, is what's driving the adoption of Web3. So that's where the cryptocurrencies play a big role. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for presenting, by the way, very inspired. So for some of these big banks, are they projecting numbers like $9 trillion, $13 trillion revenue? Do you know?
How are they protecting their own current revenue?
How
How are they projecting? Well, the McKinsey report, I suggest you read it. About half of that, I looked at the breakdown on that. About half of that was from e-commerce, about 2.5 trillion. And then the other part was fintech and, you know, entertainment and everything else, right? And JP Morgan Chase did project 1 trillion in fintech alone. And that's why they opened the bank. How did they project it? I think they're just looking at the fact that people are moving over to the Metaverse space, you know, and that 60% of the consumers are aware of it and feel like they're using it already. And they're probably making assumptions that that's not going to stop over the next 7 years. So there's a lot of adoption at the moment. Good questions. I think you had one in the back, and then I'll continue. Go ahead. Yes.
I have a question. I have a question, but with a common theme for how NFTs correspond with the legal system. Like, if you have people with voting power in NFT system, is that a partnership? Or if you have tokenized royalties, does that fall under securities law, like with the SEC? If you have that's one set of questions. How does it match with the existing legal infrastructure? And the second thing is, who manages the blockchain? Like for Coachella, is it a centralized blockchain or is it decentralized?
Okay. So these are all great questions. The legal questions alone would take us another whole presentation to address. At the moment, the solutions are jurisdiction by jurisdiction, which is, you know, just insane, right? But it's the way that it is. It's like, if you think about the laws that were governing the usage of the web, you know, it was similar, you know, it wasn't really well developed. But here you have these currencies or cryptocurrencies or these ways that people are getting paid and they are investing in things. So it's totally hitting up against the securities regulations every which way you turn, right? So you need a really good attorney for whatever company you're starting, whether it's using cryptocurrencies or NFTs. You need to understand what jurisdictions are actually friendly towards these, like Singapore's of the world and Switzerland's, and, you know, a variety countries, around sort of the meridian. They're all in this business of creating these companies and supporting them and having a set of laws that are congruent to, trying to make a business out of it. In the US, Wyoming is very friendly. They actually have a DAO. You can create a DAO in Wyoming. I have an LLC in Wyoming. They had the first LLC that was allowed for cryptocurrency and blockchain companies. Now they have a DAO that you can form legally there. I think more and more states are adopting. SEC is investigating all the time. They've investigated every exchange. They investigated every company that was ever launched, as they should, because they need a set of laws, and everybody needs a better defined set of laws in the US. But globally, there are a lot of friendly environments that are trying to grow this next generation of companies. You see a lot of them, growing in Europe, in a variety of jurisdictions as well, and in Asia. Yeah, the Coachella. So that's a really good question too. Because if you look at Binance is still a centralized organization, right? Even Binance Smart Chain, which is kind of like a competitor of Cardano and Ethereum and Solana, et cetera. And, people would tell you Solana is too centralized, for their taste. And some people would argue Cardano is more decentralized. And so you really have to kind of study the actual underlying, proposition. So is Coachella centralized? They're using FTX. FTX is a centralized exchange, right? It's one of the first crypto exchanges that was launched. It's a great exchange. It's done a lot of good work in the space, but it is run like a centralized company. So yeah, it's a real mixed bag at the moment. Good questions. You had one. Go ahead. Yes.
So I have a question about how do you think regulatory agencies and organizations like mass adoption decentralized finance and metaverse, especially in terms of maybe tax or questions of legality within metaverse?
Yeah, there's so many issues there that are being resolved as we speak. The taxation is treating some of the cryptocurrencies as, ordinary income, basically. Every time you sell it, you have to kind of pay tax on it. That has to be resolved, right? And then the Securities and Exchange Commission treats it as a security. So is it a security or is it an ordinary income? What is it, right? It can't be all of it, right? It can't be just, it can't have the worst of all worlds, right? As an asset, as a class of anything, asset class or non-asset class, whatever it is, it's got to have some sort of a reasonable treatment of the different agencies, and they have to sort of work together to figure this out at the moment. And they are. I mean, there's a lot of work being done on this daily.
Also, another question for can you paint a picture of what the metaverse would be like? Would it be like an AR consummation or just
yeah. That's a really great question too. So when you talk about mobile web, right, you don't necessarily need your iPhone or your mobile phone to access the mobile web. It could be on some sort of a magnet on your refrigerator that's tracking whether you need to replenish food in it or, whatever. It can be on an IoT device, right? It can be on a tracker, on a fitness tracker that's not connected to the internet. You're just running with it. It's tracking, and then later on you connect it to it's still mobile web, right? The same way the metaverse is going to be however you seek the data and however you use that data inside this new internet. That's the metaverse. It doesn't have to be a VR environment. It does not have to be an AR environment. It could just be online. It could be on mobile, but it could be in a metaverse type solution, a Web3 solution. What many people talk about on this next generation of internet is we had the internet where we were seeking data and searching and getting information from the web. Then we had the internet, this Web 2.0, where we actually could create content, and that became part of the internet. And we had all our pictures on Facebook, sharing with their friends and family, and Facebook making money off of it, now Meta making money off of it. But that was like a 2.0. In 3.0, we may have an experience like we're having right now, this discussion, this live discussion, but we may have it in this Web3 environment, in this metaverse environment. So it's really about how that's going to feel to you as a participant in Web3, you know, that's what's going to define the metaverse.
Excuse me.
Yes, sorry.
So, the follow-up question, the whole thing is based on DAOs, right? And the essence is decentralization. How is the dichotomy being solved as a VC investing in that DAO? And how are you moving into it?
Yeah.
And more so, last year we've seen bubble bursting for the DAOs. So maybe this is not the right model of going into complete DAOs. So anything what is happening in this industry towards some kind of centralization, some kind of enterprise, but some kind of decentralization.
Yeah. And that is a really big question when you're starting your own ventures. How are you going to go? You're just going to have a DAO? You're just going to have some venture funding? Are you going to have a cryptocurrency and do a sale of this, or just do all the VC funding? VCs were very happy with cryptocurrencies last year. They put about 30 billion into the market, more than all the other years before. So and when you talk to them, you know, I was asking that question for many of them last year, and I would say, I asked the fund of funds with one of the top investors in the space, are you going to be investing in management teams of venture funds that are just investing in equity, you know, ventures that don't have cryptocurrencies, they don't have NFTs, just equity, right, as compensation? Or are you going to invest in teams that have cryptocurrencies in them? Because then you have to deal with who owns what and what part of the economy you own, et cetera. And they said that 70% of the fund of funds is going to go towards the crypto side of it, and 30% towards the venture side. And the reason for that is they can get a 7 to 8 times ROI on their money if they do that, maybe 5 to 6 times if they did just all straight equity. So it just shows you that what happens is, you know, in the old style venture investing model, there are 3 outcomes. Outcome 1, they go public and you make some money. Outcome 2, you sell the company, you make some money. Outcome 3, it fails, right? You lose your money. Here you have these cryptocurrencies and NFTs as liquid assets that are telling you, that are showing you really quickly whether this is going to be a sale, maybe an IPO. A lot of these crypto companies have converted to IPOs, or if it's going to be a failure. You kind of know quicker, so you don't have to wait 7 to 10 years with your money invested in these deals, you know, to seek an outcome and have just one of those 3. So that's why they like the crypto side of the business, you know, just as investors.
Anything which is happening towards the side, this balance is done.
You know, it's a really good question. It really is up for debate, you know, where the crypto companies are going to be sort of owning the world of Web3, or the non-crypto players. You know, you have both. Many of them are doing well, like, you know, Coinbase is doing really well. It's publicly traded in the US, et cetera, et cetera. You know, Binance has its own cryptocurrency. It's doing better. So, yeah. But that doesn't mean every company that's cryptocurrency is going to do better than the one that's just, you know, that has equity. So it really is up for, you know, I think you can create one or the other based on what business you want to be in. You have to evaluate how likely you are to get help from the consumers and from the community. And the more likely you are, the more likely you need to go the crypto way. And the less likely, the more B2B you are, then, you know, the venture way would probably be just as efficient, if not more. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Mariana. Please join me in giving an award.
Thank you for the questions.
Thank you so much for all of your wonderful questions and for joining this year's DataCon LA. If you guys have any other questions, please feel free to stay in the room. For those of you coming in for the 5 p.m. session, unfortunately, the speaker did cancel for unexpectedly. So you can feel free to come back. We will be having another session at 5:50. So
Awesome.
yes, our wonderful presenter is already here preparing.
Thank you.